Today I'm going to be talking about the dominant 7 chord. Dominant 7 chords are the most common types of 7 chords. So if you see a letter name and then a 7 with no other letters or symbols except a sharp or a flat, if that's part of the note name, such as B flat or C sharp, that's telling you to play a dominant 7. The dominant part of dominant 7 is talking about the dominant chord in your key. The dominant chord is a chord built on the 5th step of the scale. So if you're in B flat major, you would go up the scale to step 5, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and build a chord from F, the 5th step, and that is your dominant chord. Let's do the same thing for G major. G, A, B, C, D, the 5th step is D, build a chord. So if you're in G major, your dominant chord is D major. Now for the 7 part of dominant 7 chord. To make a 7 chord, whether that's a dominant 7, a major 7, a minor 7, a diminished 7, or any other kind of 7 chord, all you have to do is add the note that's a 7th from the root of your chord to that base 3 note chord. So going with the examples from earlier, if you take the dominant chord from the key of B flat major, which is an F major chord, you would go up the interval of a 7th from F. So F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and add that E flat to your bass chord. And notice that even though in F major, that would be an E natural, you're not in F major, you're still in your original key of B flat major, which has those 2 flats, B flat and E flat. And so since you're following the same key signature you're in originally, you go up that 7th, and it's not the 7 that you would get if you were in F major, it's just that you're counting 7 up from the 5th note of your original key. So same thing in G major. If you're in G major, your dominant chord is D major. Counting up a 7th from D, remembering that you're still in the key of G major, which only has 1 sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A 7th from D would be C. You put them together, D major plus C, and you have your D7 chord. Let's do one more. We'll do the dominant 7 chord in the key of C major. Nice and easy with no flats or sharps. Dominant in the key of C is G. Build a chord off of G. Count up 7 and add that note, remembering that we're still in the key of C major with no sharps and no flats. 7th note is F, so you add that to your G chord, and there is a G7 chord. So that's how to build a dominant 7 chord. Now for a bit more of the theory behind it. There are 16 different types of 7 chords. Most of these you will never come across, so don't worry, you won't ever have to memorize them all unless you decide to become a college music theory teacher, in which case, well, you like pain. All 3 of those upper notes, the notes other than the root of the chord, so not the 1st note but the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th, those can all be changed by a half step. This is similar to your triads, those basic 3 note chords. You can have a major triad by putting a major 3rd made up of 5 half steps on the bottom, and a minor 3rd made up of 4 half steps on top. So major 3rd with a minor 3rd on top, and you have your major triad. By moving that middle note down, you turn the major chord into a minor chord. So this time you have your minor 3rd on the bottom and your major 3rd on top. And that creates your minor chord. Less commonly, you can also mess with the top note. You can either move it up a half step from the major chord, basically creating a major 3rd on top of a major 3rd to create an augmented chord. Or you can take that minor chord, move the top note down a half step to put 2 minor 3rds together to create a diminished chord. You can do any of those things for 7 chords too. The bottom interval of 1 to 3 can be either major or minor. The middle interval of 1 to 5 can be either a perfect 5th, which is pretty normal, just like in triads, or it can be moved up to be augmented or down to be diminished. And as well as those, you also have that last interval of a 7th, which can be either major, minor, or diminished. And that's why there are so many different types of 7 chords. You have 3 different notes that can change, and you can make tons of different combinations just by fiddling with one or more of them. But like I said, you won't see most of those combinations, and anyway, today we're just focusing on the dominant 7. A dominant 7 chord will always be a major 3rd, a perfect 5th, and a minor 7th. In other words, you're playing a major chord with a minor 7th on top. For this reason, the real name of dominant 7 chord is major minor 7 chord. But seriously, who wants to have to say that every single time? So since the only time that this combination occurs naturally in any key, in other words, if you follow the key signature, this is the only time that you'll get that major 3rd, perfect 5th, minor 7th stacked just that way in any key, is the dominant. So starting from finger 5, that's why we call it the dominant 7. Now, of course, you can always add accidentals to any key. You can slap an F sharp into a flat key and artificially make a major minor 7 chord, and that definitely does happen. But here's the thing. The thing that is so special about the dominant 7 chord is that there is a tritone, a diminished 5th in between notes 3 and 7. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 3, and 7 is a tritone. A tritone really wants to resolve inward, with each note going towards the other. And if you do what that tritone wants and resolve it inward, the notes that you get are the bottom 2 notes of the tonic chord in that same key. What that means is that even if you're in D major, and you all of a sudden play a C7 chord, what your ear hears is, oh, we're not in D major anymore, we've suddenly moved and now we're resolving into F major. That dominant 7 chord has a very, very strong pull back to its tonic chord. Because of this, even if you come across a major minor 7 chord that needs some accidentals and isn't actually native to the key that it's used in, it's really just a dominant 7 chord that's being borrowed from a different key. So it's still called a dominant 7 chord, even if it's stolen from another key. Okay, summing all of this up, a dominant 7 chord is made up of the triad or 3-note chord based on the 5th note of the scale, plus the note a 7th from the root of the chord, following the key signature of your original key. There are 16 different types of 7 chords. A dominant 7 chord is also called a major minor 7 chord. Any of these other 7 chords will also have another symbol added. Minor might have M-I-N between the letter name and the 7. So for example, A mine 7. A diminished might have either a little circle in between those or the letters D-I-M. So that could be A D-I-M 7 or A little circle 7. Augmented might have a plus sign in the middle there, etc. But the dominant 7 chord is the only one that will be just the name of the root plus the number 7. So A 7, B flat 7, F sharp 7, etc. You can use a major minor 7 chord in any key, including a key it doesn't belong in, by adding sharps or flats that are not in the key signature. However, this is called a borrowed chord, and it's still called a dominant 7. It's just that you're stealing the dominant 7 from a different key. And honestly, usually if you're using a dominant 7 that's from a different key, it's because you're temporarily moving to that other key. If you're my student, feel free to ask more questions in your next lesson. If you're not my student, I'm sorry for you.